Pablo Escobar wasn't just a drug trafficker, he was a man who attempted to buy an entire nation. Born into a modest Colombian family, his journey from stealing tombstones to controlling 80% of the world's cocaine market is as chilling as it is legendary. By the 1980s, the Medellín Cartel was earning $420 million a week, turning Escobar into a global powerhouse who could challenge the state itself. He was a master of Plata o plomo, offering a bribe or a bullet, and he used both to bring Colombia to its knees. Before we continue, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into how it all began. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949, in Colombia. He grew up in a modest family, not rich, but not completely broken either. His father was a farmer, his mother a school teacher, and for a while, life looked normal. But very early on, something about Escobar stood out. He didn't just want to succeed, he wanted control. As a teenager in Medellín, he stepped into crime quietly. He started by stealing tombstones, sanding off the names, and reselling them as new. Soon after, he moved into selling fake diplomas and report cards, making quick money from people desperate for a second chance. By the time he was around 20 years old, he had already built up about 100,000 pesos through these small schemes. But things didn't stay small for long. He began stealing cars, working with local gangs, and slowly building a reputation. Then came something darker. In the early 1970s, Escobar started kidnapping people for ransom. One of the most well-known cases brought in $50,000, and it showed just how far he was willing to go. But small crimes weren't enough. He wanted something much bigger. By the early 1970s, Escobar had moved past street-level crime and into something more organized. He began smuggling contraband goods like cigarettes and stereo equipment, bringing them into Colombia through hidden compartments and avoiding heavy taxes. These early operations weren't just about money. They were about learning how the system worked. During this time, he became part of what was known as the Marlboro Wars, a violent struggle between smugglers fighting for control of the illegal cigarette trade. It was here that Escobar sharpened his skills in logistics, bribery, and control. He built networks of drivers, pilots, and corrupt officials who helped move goods across borders without getting caught. Each shipment could generate tens of thousands of dollars, and Escobar made sure he was involved in every step. He didn't trust easily, and that made his operations tighter and harder to break. Soon, he expanded into marijuana trafficking. Using the same routes, he began moving loads of around 100 to 500 kilograms per trip. With profits reaching up to $1,000 per kilogram in the United States, the money started growing fast. This phase wasn't just about smuggling, it was training for something far bigger. Then, he found something far more profitable, and everything changed. By the mid-1970s, Escobar shifted from marijuana to cocaine, a product that brought in up to 20 times more profit per kilogram. This wasn't just a new business, it was a turning point. Around 1976, he officially formed what became known as the Medellín Cartel, working closely with key partners like the Ochoa brothers and his cousin Gustavo Gaviria. Together, they built a system that controlled everything, from sourcing coca paste in Peru and Bolivia to refining it in Colombia and shipping it out. That same year, Escobar was caught with 39 kilograms of cocaine hidden in a vehicle. But instead of ending his career, it showed how powerful his connections already were. He managed to walk free, and operations continued without slowing down. By 1978, the scale had changed completely. The cartel had already transported around 19,000 kilograms of cocaine into the United States. Flights carrying hundreds of kilograms became more frequent, using hidden airstrips and new routes that were harder to track. Soon his operation wasn't just growing, it was dominating. By the 1980s, at his peak, the Medellín Cartel handled up to 80% of the cocaine entering the United States, turning Escobar's operation into a global force. The system was massive but carefully structured. Coca paste was brought in from Peru and Bolivia, processed in hidden jungle labs across Colombia, and then moved out through a network of aircraft, boats, and land routes. At one point, these labs were capable of producing up to 15 tons in a single day. Flights carrying up to 400 kilograms at a time became routine, with dozens of runs happening every week. To stay ahead, Escobar constantly adapted. When pressure increased in the Caribbean, routes shifted through Central America, using countries like Honduras and Panama as new transit points. This flexibility kept the supply flowing even under heavy enforcement. The money was beyond imagination. By 1987, his personal wealth was estimated at over $3 billion, while the cartel itself was generating close to $22 billion a year. For 7 years, he remained on the list of the world's richest individuals. With billions flowing in, Escobar didn't just spend money, he used it to reshape how people saw him. In the early 1980s, he started investing heavily in Medellin's poorest neighborhoods, places the government had largely ignored. He funded the construction of around 5,000 low-cost homes, giving families a place to live where there was once nothing. He built schools, football fields, parks, and even churches. In areas like Moravia, he helped organize community projects that brought basic services to people who had never had them before. This wasn't random generosity, it created loyalty. People began to see him not as a criminal, but as someone who delivered results. That's how he earned names like Don Pablo and Robin Hood Paisa. Football became a big part of this image. He supported local teams, especially Atlético Nacional, which went on to win the 1989 Copa Libertadores. He also built pitches in poor areas, making the sport accessible to young people who had nothing else. But behind all this, there was a system. Help came with expectations. Support came with silence. To many, he was a hero. To others, something far more dangerous. But charity wasn't enough. He wanted power at the highest level. By the early 1980s, Escobar had already built wealth and influence. But that wasn't enough. He wanted legitimacy. In 1982, he entered politics and was elected as an alternate member of Colombia's Congress, a position that gave him parliamentary immunity and a layer of protection against extradition. At first, his public image helped him. His work in poor communities brought him support, but that image didn't last long. Very quickly, his past caught up with him. Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla openly accused him of being involved in drug trafficking. Investigations followed, and by 1984, Escobar was expelled from politics. That moment changed everything. Not long after, Lara Bonilla was assassinated. It marked the beginning of a direct confrontation between Escobar and the state. He formed a group known as the Extraditables, openly opposing extradition policies and sending a clear message to anyone who stood in his way. The violence escalated fast. In 1989 alone, more than 200 police officers were killed as part of this campaign. Judges, officials, and public figures became targets, and fear spread across the country. This was no longer about power or money. It had turned into a war. By the late 1980s, the conflict had reached a point where the entire country felt it. What started as targeted violence turned into something much wider, something that affected ordinary people every day. In 1989, one of the most shocking moments came when presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán was assassinated during a public rally. He had been a strong supporter of extradition, and his death sent a clear message across Colombia. But it didn't stop there. Just months later, a commercial flight, Avianca Flight 203, was destroyed mid-air. There were 107 people on board, and 3 more were killed on the ground. The target was believed to be a political figure who never boarded the plane. That same year, the scale of attacks grew even larger. There were more than 500 bombings linked to the cartel's campaign, spreading fear across cities and public spaces. At its peak, the violence contributed to around 4,000 deaths each year across the country. Even the justice system was not untouched, with events like the Palace of Justice siege leaving around 100 people dead, including 11 Supreme Court justices. For many, daily life became uncertain. No place felt completely safe. Eventually, even he realised this war couldn't go on forever. By the early 1990s, the pressure had finally reached Escobar from all sides. In 1991, he made a surprising move. He surrendered to the authorities, but on his own terms. A new constitution had banned extradition, and in return, he agreed to serve time inside a prison he built himself, known as La Catedral. But this was no ordinary prison. It had a football field, a bar, a jacuzzi, and space to host guests. Even while inside, Escobar continued to control parts of his operation, showing that his power was still intact. That control didn't last long. In 1992, when authorities planned to move him to a standard facility, Escobar escaped before they could act. What followed was a massive manhunt that lasted 16 months. Around 600 members of the search block, supported with advanced tracking technology, focused on finding him. Escobar kept moving between safe houses, but one mistake changed everything. He made calls to his family, and those calls were traced. On December 2nd, 1993, he was located in Medellín. As he tried to escape across rooftops, he was shot and killed. With his death, the Medellín Cartel quickly fell apart and control shifted to rivals. In the end, the war Pablo Escobar waged against Colombia eventually cost an estimated 4,000 lives, including ministers, judges, and thousands of police officers. His end came not in a courtroom, but on a Medellín rooftop in 1993, ending a manhunt that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Yet decades later, his legacy remains deeply fractured. While the world remembers a narco-terrorist, some in the barrios still pray to him as a saint who filled the gaps the government ignored. Today, Escobar's hippos and his Robin Hood neighborhoods remain. What do you think? Is Colombia truly free of his shadow, or is his influence permanent? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like and subscribe button for more, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.